The year was 2784, and the Zorath Cluster was dying. Not slowly, not poetically, dying the way a star dies when its fusion heart gutters out, violently, suddenly, and with no regard for the trillions of sentient lives caught in the collapse. A rogue hyperlane fracture had torn open near the cluster's core. What began as a navigational anomaly became a cascading chain of quantum ruptures. Black holes blossomed like tumors. Entire sectors folded into themselves. Gravity waves the size of nebulae shredded worlds into glittering dust. The Zorath were an ancient confederation of 12 species, proud, crystalline, telepathic, and utterly convinced of their centrality in the cosmos. For 8,000 years they had presided over the most luminous volume of the Perseus Arm. Their cities floated in the coronas of blue giants. Their minds spoke across light years without machines. When the fracture began, they did what any ancient, proud civilization would do. They asked for help. The plea went out on every channel the galaxy recognized: the Concordance Emergency Band, the Matriarch Songline, the Machine Choir's Tachyon Lattice, even the human FTL comms that the older races still considered quaint. The message was simple, elegant, heartbreaking.
Come.
Our children are burning. The laws of physics themselves are killing us. Come. The galaxy listened. Then the galaxy looked away. The Vera matriarchs calculated that intervention would cost them 3 fleet cycles and decided the Zorath had grown too numerous anyway. The Silicon Conclave ran 17 million simulations and concluded the fracture was 99.9997% likely to stabilize on its own, eventually, and that the loss of organic civilizations was, statistically, acceptable. The K-Chwairer Empire simply laughed. The Zorath had refused to share their telepathic genome for centuries. Let them reap the silence they had sown. Even the gentle Omu clouds, who wept ammonia tears for every dying star, turned their vast migratory bodies away. The pain is too sharp, they sang. We would shatter if we came closer. Within 6 standard months, fully half the cluster's population was gone. The rest huddled in the last stable gravity wells, their crystalline skin cracking from grief and radiation. Their collective mind, once a cathedral of thought, had become a dirge. And then, uninvited, unwanted, and centuries late by galactic standards, humanity arrived. They came in ships that looked like scrapyard refugees, fat-bellied freighters with patchwork armor, converted asteroid miners, century-old colony arcs that still had soil in their hydroponics bays. No sleek phase-hull destroyers, no gravitic lances, no shields woven from dark energy. Just engines that belched cerulean plasma and hulls painted with company logos older than most species. At the edge of the dying cluster, a Zorath picket fleet, 3 surviving dreadmines linked into a single war psalm, hailed the newcomers with what little coherence they had left. Identify yourselves. This is restricted space. The Concordance has declared the cluster a lost volume. The lead human ship, a blocky monstrosity named We're Here to Help, replied in accented but flawless Zorath cant. This is Captain Amrita Singh of the Independent Human Relief Flotilla. We're not Concordance. We're not here with permission. We're here because you asked. There was a pause long enough for a neutron star to tick once. We asked 8 months ago. The Zorath dreadmind pulsed, the psychic equivalent of a bitter laugh. The galaxy refused. Yeah, Captain Singh said. We were busy. The truth was uglier. Humanity had only just achieved reliable FTL 4 centuries earlier. They were still the new kids, the loud ones, the species that bred like bacteria and argued about everything. Most of the galaxy treated them as a curiosity at best, a pest at worst. When the Zorath plea first went out, human governments had debated for weeks. Aid organizations raised funds. Scientists wrote papers. Politicians postured. By the time the first human relief ships were ready, the galaxy had already written the Zorath off. So the governments backed out. Too risky. Too far. Too little return. The people went anyway. They sold houses. They emptied retirement accounts. They stole ships when necessary. A mining guild on New Kyoto mortgaged 3 generations of profit. A university on Lagrange 5 turned its entire physics department into a propulsion lab overnight. A streaming star from Earth Prime auctioned her neural implants to buy reaction mass. They called themselves the Flotilla. 17,000 ships, 430 million humans, and exactly 0 official sanctions. And now they were here. The Zorath were too exhausted to be outraged. One of their last lucid minds, a being named Zorath who had once composed light symphonies that spanned entire systems, asked the only question left. Why? Captain Singh's answer was broadcast in the clear, on every band, in every language humanity had ever stolen or invented. Because nobody else would. And because we know what it's like to scream into vacuum and hear nothing back. Zorath felt something then that the Zorath had not felt in centuries. Curiosity. The humans did not come to conquer. They came to work. They dove into the fracture zone with ships that should have been torn apart in minutes. They did it anyway. They built things no one had tried before because no one had been desperate enough or foolish enough to believe they could matter. Dr. Mateo Vega, formerly of the Titan Science Collective, now wearing a patched-back suit with a hand-painted flamingo on the helmet, stood on the bridge of the We're Here to Help and stared at a holographic nightmare, a map of the fracture lattice, black holes dancing like murderous marionettes. We can't stop it, he told the assembled captains. But we don't have to. We just have to keep it from eating the last 40 billion Zorath for another 8 years. 8 years? Captain Singh asked. That's how long it'll take the fracture to burn itself out. After that, physics wins, the cluster stabilizes, and the survivors get to start over. We just need to buy them 8 years. Someone laughed. Someone else started crying. Then they all got to work. They called it the harness. The idea was insane. The math was worse. Step 1. Seed the largest black holes with negative mass exotic matter to lower their horizon temperature. Step 2. Link the holes with stabilized Einstein-Rosen filaments, wormholes, basically, turning the fracture lattice into a controllable grid. Step 3. Use the gravitational shear between holes to siphon excess energy out of the cluster and radiate it harmlessly into intergalactic space. No one in the galaxy had ever built a wormhole larger than a proton. Humanity built thousands, some of them 50 kilometers wide, using reactors cobbled together from ore smelters and prayer. Zorath telepaths watched in stunned silence as human engineers died by the thousands, burning their ships like matches to keep the filaments open. They watched children, actual human children whose parents had brought them because there was no one left to leave them with, ferry supplies in shuttles barely bigger than city buses. Zorath, whose mind had begun to fracture along with the cluster, linked tentatively with one of the human children during a resupply run. The girl's name was Lin Gwyn. She was 9 years old and missing 2 front teeth. "You are afraid," Zorath observed. "Yep," Lin said aloud, because she hadn't learned to mind speak yet. "But Mom says being afraid and being brave are the same thing, except brave keeps going." Zorath had no answer to that. Years bled together. The harness held. Barely. Sometimes it didn't. There were weeks when the sky over the last Zorath refuge worlds lit up with the funeral pyres of human ships that had pushed too close to a singularity. The Zorath began to sing again, but the songs were different now, lower, slower, threaded with a new note none of them could name. On the 5th anniversary of the flotilla's arrival, Captain Amrita Singh, gray-haired now, one lung replaced by a black market Zorath graft, stood before the Council of Surviving Minds. Her uniform was patched, oil-stained, and still carried the faded logo of the company that had once owned her ship. "We're running out of everything," she said bluntly. "Ships, people, time. The harness is fraying. We can give you maybe 1 more year. After that." She didn't finish. She didn't need to. Zorath, now the closest thing the Zorath had to a leader, rose from the crystalline dais. Their body was scarred, half their facets shattered, but their mind burned bright again. "You have given us 5 years," they said. 5 years we were not promised. 5 years in which our children learned to laugh again. You have spent your species' future to buy us a past." Singh shrugged, embarrassed. We'll figure out our future later. Right now it's your turn. No, Zorath said, and the word carried the weight of 8,000 years of certainty. Now it is both. The Zorath did something then that no one in the galaxy had ever seen them do. They knelt. Not in submission. In partnership. They opened their collective mind fully, for the first time in recorded history, to another species. Every secret of crystalline neural resonance, every harmonic of telepathic engineering, every fragment of knowledge they had hoarded out of pride or fear, they gave it all. And humanity, being humanity, immediately started improving it. The last year of the crisis was the most beautiful and the most terrible. Zorath and human minds linked across light years, singing the harness together. Children of both species grew up bilingual in thought and word. New ships were grown rather than built, crystalline hulls laced with human graphene and stubbornness. When the final rupture storm came, the one the simulation said would finish the cluster, 300 million humans and 4 billion Zorath stood inside the harness and held the line. They held it by telling stories. Lin Gwyn, now 14 and a licensed wormhole tech, told the story of the first time she saw a Zorath sing a star to sleep. Zorath told the story of the day a human child gave them a crayon drawing of a flamingo wearing a space helmet. Captain Singh, dying of cumulative radiation, told the story of a species that was too young, too loud, too reckless, and too stubborn to let the universe kill its neighbors. Together, they wove those stories into the quantum foam itself, anchoring reality with narrative the way ancient humans once anchored it with myth. And the fracture closed. Not gently. Nothing about this had been gentle. But it closed. 8 years to the day after the flotilla arrived uninvited, the last unstable singularity collapsed into a harmless neutron star. The cluster's gravity settled. The skies went dark and peaceful for the first time in a decade. Of the 430 million humans who had come, fewer than 90 million remained. Most of the rest had no graves, only coordinates and names etched into the sides of Zorath crystal spires. The galaxy, which had watched from a safe distance, finally sent observers. Concordance diplomats arrived in gleaming phase ships, ready to negotiate the new balance of power. They found the cluster already transformed, human habitats orbiting crystalline worlds, mixed children running through corridors that sang when you touched them, a new language evolving that was half-spoken, half-thought, all hope. The diplomats asked to speak to the leader of humanity. They were taken to a small park on the world, once called Zorath Prime, now called Haven. There, an old woman sat on a bench, feeding birds that looked like living auroras. Her left arm was Zorath crystal, her right still human skin. She wore a patched jacket with a faded flamingo. "I'm told you're in charge," the lead diplomat said stiffly. Amrita Singh looked up and smiled the tired, triumphant smile of someone who had bet everything and somehow won. "Nobody's in charge," she said. "That's the point. We just showed up." The diplomat tried again. "The Concordance wishes to offer humanitarian assistance." Singh laughed until she coughed. "Little late for that, don't you think?" Behind her, Zorath approached, their facets catching the light of 3 gentle suns. "The Concordance may keep its assistance," they said, voice resonating in every mind present. "We have learned a new law of physics from our human siblings. It is very simple." They placed a crystalline hand on Amrita Singh's shoulder. "When someone asks for help," Zorath said, "and the galaxy refuses, sometimes the ones who are never asked come anyway." The diplomat had no reply. Years later, travelers passing through the reborn Zorath Cluster, now called the Accord, would find a monument at the exact coordinates where the "We're Here to Help" had made its first burn into the fracture zone. It was not large. Just a single piece of hull plating from the old ship, welded to a Zorath crystal spire. On the plating, in human script and Zorath harmonics, were etched these words: "We were busy being newborn when you called. We were busy arguing about borders and profits and pride. We were busy being small. But we heard you. And we came anyway." Below that, in smaller letters, someone had added, "Next time, we'll be faster." The galaxy, for once, was silent. And in the quiet, something new began to grow.